Hey everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Bar podcast. I'm Denisa Tova, your host, and today I cannot wait to chat with the amazing Lois Liberman. She's not just any lawyer. She's a partner at BlankRome. She's a rock star in a matrimonial law, and she is the go-to for high net worth clients. And she even made a history with New York's first reported same-sex divorce case. Plus, she is really big on lifting up other female lawyers in the industry. She is a dear friend. She's a game changer, and I am so excited to have her here with us today. Welcome to the show, Lois.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be on this amazing podcast, and your words about me were I'm so appreciative of it.
Well, you certainly deserve it. You really do inspire me, and I'm just curious. I want to dive in, and I want to hear your story. How did you end up being an attorney?
Well, so I knew I wanted to be an attorney because I was basically a frustrated actress. So being in the courtroom was really not a stretch. Um, I went to law school. I figured that in court right away, you needed to be either the DA's office or a legal aid office. And when I interviewed on the on-campus interviewing for New York, the DA offices didn't really love me, but the legal aid offices did. And I happened to have had a wonderful interview with a wonderful woman at Nassau County Legal Aid Society in the Family Court Division. She said, you know what, I think you might be excellent for the family court division that we have. Have you ever, taken a family law course? I said, I took one. I think I liked it, and she said, I just think you would be really good. Interestingly enough, she pegged me perfectly. So I joined Nassau County Legal Aid Society in the Family Court Division. It was a wonderful training ground. We were a small band of lawyers who would run up and down the stairs of the family court, helping people who either were in custody battles, who potentially were losing their children because of positive toxicology, who potentially were involved in some sort of order protection aspect, or who had violated a support order and potentially was or about to be sent to potentially jail. So we were free legal advice. You learned a great deal, and the judges who we were before were part of like our family. So there were two grandfatherly judges who took to me, and one day, normally working at legal aid, you have a 2-year commitment. I was there for about a year and a half, and Judge Fiden said to me, uh, Steve Gassman lost his paralegal. You'll be starting to work for him next Monday. I was like, what? I don't understand. Whatever. He goes, no, no, it'll all be fine. Of course, when I went to tell Matt Maraskin, who was the head of legal aid at the time, he could have cared less, but I thought it was the craziest thing ever. I went to work for Steve Gassman, which was a wonderful, wonderful training ground to be in the private sector. And it, again, long ago, since I've been doing this a long time, in order to get jobs, instead of sending resumes now like into the ether, you had a post office box in the law journal, and there was a advertisement that Stan Lotwin was looking for an associate. My husband said you should apply for that. I said, "Oh my God, he's a scion in the field and amazing in the city. He handles the celebrities. He'll never hire me." And he said, "Just put in your resume." In fact, I think he probably wrote my cover letter and did much. Just so happened it was like kismet. I submitted my resume. At the time, a wonderful lawyer named Leonard Florescu, who's passed, had just joined Henzer Greenblatt at the time. He was part of the Schlissel law firm. He happened to have been in charge of the pile of resumes. He saw my resume knowing that I was working on the island. He consulted his mentee, who is a now wonderful, famous, fabulous lawyer, Elena Karabatos, who was a dear friend of mine. Said, "Do you know Lois Liberman?" She said, "Absolutely. She's a dear friend of mine." He pulled me from the pile. I got an interview. And Stan used to tell people at the holiday parties for years and years that during our interview, I giggled. He thought I was kind of goofy, but Norman really liked me. So that's why they hired me. And we went from a group of 5 of us to our matrimonial practice now. We, of course, grew the firm. The firm is now BlankRome, but we now have a 35 person matrimonial
Mm.
group that is bi-coastal in New York, LA, Florida, New Jersey, and Connecticut, which, I could never have seen that 31 years ago.
Wow, what a powerhouse. Do you remember like what it felt like your first custody case? You mentioned when you worked for legal aid.
Yeah.
Do you remember what that felt like? Because that's not easy, right?
You know what? Being in family law is really quite almost perfect for me and my personality, in the sense of me wanting to fight for my client and truly
Mm.
zealously advocating on their behalf and recognizing how important what I'm doing is so integral to their lives and can make a huge difference. So whether or not, I think my first case was representing a woman at the time who hadn't paid support, and I went to my first hearing and they were going to put her in jail, and I thought the like world was over kind of thing. She got time to pay, it all worked out, but having dealing with the first custody case, in a sense of working out visitation, I recognize how important that was. To me, every one of the issues that I dealt with was so important to that individual that I knew the responsibility I had. To a certain extent, it was hard for a young
Yeah.
lawyer who takes everything so personally. I mean, this is now 30, whatever, now 35 years later. I'm still take everything super to heart and recognize how important my job is. But of course, it's gotten easier along the way.
That's one thing I know about you. You are very passionate about what you do and you do advocate zealously. You are also, though, practical, and reasonable, and so it you also have a lot of what I call life texture, and we will get to that. I'm just curious. You mentioned you representing celebrities, and we're not necessarily dropping names here, but do you remember the feeling when you represented the first celebrity? Did you feel starstruck? Was it kind of like, well, at the end of the day, they're just another client, and they're going through very difficult transition. What was that like for you?
Well, for sure, my first case where I, was definitely very green and a baby lawyer, and having had, a famous person call me at home, and it was on my answering machine. For sure, I played that over and over and over again because her voice was very distinctive, and it was like kind of like incredible that that person was calling me. But you know what? Very quickly you recognize that no matter what reputation or significance that they may have to the public, they're just people and their issues are the same as everybody else. So from the standpoint of, once you get over the fact of who they are or how important they are, or they're calling you, you recognize that you're just playing a pivotal role in their life like everybody else.
Very much so, because then they have to sort of shield that personal life from the public life, and so you essentially become a confidant, and so that's important role. Um, Going back to your many passions, I know that you launched very successfully some time ago a webinar series called Look Ahead with Lois Liberman Salons. So tell me, what inspired you to do that, and what is it about?
Well, so several years ago, I had invited a group of former clients and current clients to a luncheon. I had previously been part of the um, women's, it was part of the Lincoln Center Corporate Fund, and it was the Women's Leadership Group. And we had an annual fashion luncheon every year. And I happened to have bought a table, had a bunch of of my, like I said, former clients and current clients who happen to have been in similar industries. There was some overlap, so people knew one another that I didn't realize that they knew. And everyone started kind of like talking in the sense of like sharing stories about, oh, do you remember when Lois did, oh, she, when she was, yelling at my husband in the middle of this, in this conference, it was the most amazing thing. Or, oh, when she did this or whatever. And they were talking, but I recognized that they had this commonality, right? That they were able to kind of share their experiences. And a light bulb went off in my head and thought, you know what? Wouldn't it be wonderful if I could kind of provide different types of information or resources and to just basically help build on the community that they definitely,
Mm.
I could see was forming, because people just want to know, especially if they're in different stages of what they're going through, that somebody else has been through it and that they survived and that
Yeah.
they thrived, and kind of getting that feeling of like somebody's hand on their back, or at least being able to share so they don't feel alone. I thought it would be a wonderful idea to do something like that. So at the lunch, I said, would you guys be interested if I brought in speakers, or if I brought in like resources for people that have been through divorces or are in the midst of it, then it might be helpful to them. They were, yeah, that would be great. It took a while, but what was interesting about COVID was that it was allowed me to kind of be able to create kind of on the webinar forum so that
Mm.
people could sign in, and it was not necessarily, it would be almost easier for them than to schlep to an office or to
Yeah.
attend some type of gathering, right, with respect to their schedules
Yeah.
or their kids or whatever. This way, not only could they attend the webinar live if they wanted, we tape record it so that they could
Mm.
see it later on if they couldn't make it, or if there was something that resonated with them, for them to listen to it over again. So initially, my first one, the inaugural one, was co-parenting with a narcissist, which definitely hit a
Wow.
nerve. That
Yeah.
was very well received. We did that again for kind of like a larger audience. And then we've done things like navigating your own financial wealth, looking to relaunch, getting back in the dating world. I had somebody from Bumble and somebody from Goop, who was a beauty editor and like a stylist, kind of just to talking about how do you get back on the horse and what are the,
Yeah.
the options out there, which was super interesting. I've had blended families, how to survive the holidays with a blended family, with an author of the Stepmoms Club. I've had
Mm.
some kind of mindfulness and coaching. But these, what I have found is that these salons have really, resonated with people. And I just find it incredibly gratifying, especially so when, if they are able to attend it live, they see other people who are kind of
Yeah.
also interested. Either they can see them, or they see a name, or they just know that they're there, and people can ask questions and talk. We don't tape record that, obviously, but I've really enjoyed doing it. It's a lot of work, but I have found even those, I usually get immediate feedback, but those who I've sent the recordings to, that they've sent the recordings to other people. Like we've done coercive control. That's a very kind of,
Mm.
significant issue that people
Yeah.
don't necessarily want to share. And I know that that video is kind of like gone through people sending it or sending it out to this one, or that one might know that one. And it definitely, I feel like it's helped people.
The more support, the better. And knowing that you're not alone going through it. And you're right, there's so many facets because as you go through the transition, you essentially are losing part of your identity and being able to move forward, heal, and almost like tap into your sort of inner goddess. And then, the more resources you have, the better. Because I think there's for many people there's a sense of shame, wrapped around it. So sort of normalizing it, that's really wonderful. And again, just right, seems like it's aligned with who you are. Are you still offering these? Where would people go to find out, or where would women go to find out about your next one, or how does that work?
Sure. No. So they're on my bio with my firm. Those recordings. So that if they want to check me out at BlankRome, they will. You will see it on my bio. The recordings that have already been done. My next one, I believe, is going to be in January. We're going to revisit the dealing with a narcissist with, I
Yeah.
believe, an author who has written a book, Disarming the Narcissist. And what I found, what was so interesting, I think during this last webinar that I did, that there's very few resources for men who are dealing with female
Mm.
narcissists. Much of the
Oh.
literature and much of the discussions and support groups and videos out there relate to, they always talk about the male narcissist, and there are so many,
Yeah.
and there's definitely you know issues that go with that, but the female narcissist is almost a distinct character. And when men, who I for some reason have quite a few of those clients at the moment, it's harder for them because they
Mm.
are not necessarily able to kind of find the support that that
Mm.
other women can obtain through support groups. And so my hope will be is that this will be a wider audience. It'll be kind of put out there as it we're talking about, it's like a non-gender neutral, because these tools, and I think that this particular author has some very interesting, a little different ways of dealing with it, with a narcissist. So that's my hope. I believe it's going to be in January.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, getting away from labels and stereotyping. Uh, Again, a human being that has a whole range of feelings and accumulated preferences from their childhood, and then you throw in other challenges. It doesn't matter where they sort of fit in on the spectrum. You as a human being could really use all these resources. So that's great. And talking about raising awareness, you yourself have faced many setbacks in your personal life, and one of them was someone very close to you dealing with Lyme disease that I know has been life altering for you. Tell me, how have you navigate that, and how do you continue to raise awareness around this? And you've educated me around this dangerous and oftentimes undetected disease.
Well, so Denisa, you know the story, but my husband 19 years ago fell ill. He had a bizarre kind of episode. We thought it was like a kidney stone or something, because it was really an immediate kind of emergency. He happened to have had a one of his hepatic artery had basically rerouted, and it was very painful. So, but because this bizarre incident occurred, he was they the doctors initially thought potentially he had some sort of autoimmune or vascular disease, and they gave him very large doses of prednisone, which it reduces your immune system. At the time, nobody knew that he had been kind of afflicted with, had probably when he was young, when he was at camp, or where any of us could probably, if you hike or if you have been out in the woods, certain places, you may very well have been bitten by a tick. You may not have known it. You may not have the bullseye rash. And he had had
Mm.
certain issues when he was younger, but they really just thought that it was Epstein Barr, or he had mono. In any event, when the doctors had given him prednisone, it reduced his immune system so dramatically that his Lyme and other tick-borne illnesses basically grew to in such a fashion where my husband was a vibrant, at the time, 40 something year old man who could not walk. And none of the doctors could figure out what was going on with him. Luckily, through some connections that I had, we went to this wonderful doctor, Dr. Galland, who figured it out. But prior to that, we had been at the Mayo Clinic for 3 weeks, and they couldn't figure it out. They, in fact, put us kind of on a journey and an odyssey of something that was completely different and wrong. So he never, we wasted months to a certain extent that we could have probably been treating it. So the point of all of this is that luckily, I mean, it took my husband a very long time to treat the Lyme, and that usually there's co-infections when you are bitten by a tick, and there are other types of tick-borne illnesses that are considered co-infections. It took a very long time for us to treat him to such an extent that he could be functional again. But
Mm.
he, and because of our experience, because we had resources, we had connections, and we had the ability to, try and found Lyme literate doctors over time that could help him. Um, we were lucky enough to become affiliated with an organization, Global Lyme Alliance, that my husband has kind of dedicated his life now to. He's the chair of that organization. It is,
Mm.
the mission is to obviously find a cure, to raise awareness, and to provide patient voices, to empower them. What is so sad and just so demoralizing is that individuals can go to a myriad of doctors. The stories of Lyme, chronic Lyme patients, of how many doctors that they've gone through, how many thousands of dollars they've had to expend, how many medications, and to be told at times it's in your head because it's not coming up on a test is beyond demoralizing. And
Right.
so this organization is raising awareness. If you go on gla.org right now, Christopher Maloney of SVU, who is well known, he has partnered with GLA because he also had been afflicted at different times to raise awareness. And so he's done a PSA, which has done just dramatic with respect to getting eyeballs on the organization. So should anybody have seen this, it GLA will provide um, resources in the sense of providing you with doctors to refer you to provide patient to patient peer services, support groups, people who have gone through this and who are looking for answers and hope. So that organization has been very near and dear to our family's heart. And, with my husband who continues, at 64 to continue to struggle with his health, this has been incredibly meaningful, that organization, both, from the standpoint of him helping others and him also having the ability um, to connect with people who have gone through this.
And normalizing it for so many people, you're right. You yourself as a human being, you may feel something is off. You know your body more than anybody, so do not
Right.
underestimate that. And I do know I had some people in my circle, and I've encouraged them to find, like you said, a Lyme literate doctor, and do not give up. Just get another opinion and another opinion, because um, it could be devastating. So that's
I
I
think
will post. Yeah.
No, no, no. What I was going to say is like the previously, the normal thought process was it would be a 2 week cycle of an antibiotic, usually doxycycline, other antibiotics, and that's enough,
Yeah.
and that's going to be fine. That's not going to be enough. And if you've been a chronic Lyme patient, there may be lots of other um, treatments and protocols that you may need to do to be able to boost your immune system and to deal with a lot of the neurological issues that you will have.
Mm, right.
So in any event,
No.
it's a wonderful organization for people to know about.
Thank you so much, and we will definitely post it below your bio link, actually, below the episode for sure. Switching gears, if you could not practice law, what would you do?
Well, if it wasn't an issue of having to make a living, I would probably be selling makeup at Sephora because am a product junkie and love that and love to tell people what they should do and to wear lipstick and so on. If I if if I was dealing with my other passion, I'm basically I say I'm not a mental health professional because, I play one on TV. I probably would have gone into social work or psychology because that's what I am. I'm an empath naturally, but I'm always the person that no matter where I am, even if they didn't know I was a divorce attorney, people end up telling me kind of their life stories or their issues. So I've all, feel like that would have been a path I would have probably gone down.
And I can see that. I can definitely see that with you. Totally. That is right on. You and I spoke about sort of a form of escapism, when you really need sort of a mental floss is to get into reality shows. What are you binging on right now?
So I yes, my that is kind of my therapy. I love to watch reality shows, usually on Bravo. So let's see, I've done the whole Real Housewife of the OC. I've done the New York.
Yep.
I think presently I'm on Southern Charm, sadly.
Mm,
So
me too. Yep.
haven't done. I can't say that I've done every Real Housewife. I've never done Salt Lake City. I don't do Potomac, and I don't think I did the whole thing with Dubai, but I did love obviously Jersey, New York City, OC, and Beverly Hills. That definitely love all those. And you know what? Watching them to a certain extent, and that's like watching them, their train wrecks of the lives, or just
Yeah.
the over the top. It just allows you to escape. What all the matrimonial lawyers that you interview and the judges, right? We are dealing with
Yeah.
such
Oh,
emotionally laden, really hard stuff, and unless you're a robot, it's gonna, it washes over you. And if you care about your clients, it definitely, can eat away at you. So for me, this is my escapism. Obviously, I also like a good book, or watching some, fun show on, Apple TV. Ted Lasso, I think, brought joy to everybody.
yeah.
Shrinking was an amazing show also that was about therapists and they were kind of crazy. It was all fabulous. Things to bring you a laugh. I'm a big believer in laughter being an extremely important medicine. I think what has allowed me to practice so long and still love it is because I happen to work with a group of individuals who are, my other dysfunctional family, so to speak, people who I really look forward to seeing every day and who I really rely upon much for not only, support of understanding what we're all going through in the trenches every day, but for, good advice and just a good laugh or venting moment
Mm,
for, and it's so important, when I, deal with practitioners who are in either like silos or they're in a group that
mm.
are not as cohesive or supportive. I don't know how they can do it because this practice can be truly, it can take a toll.
Yeah, people don't realize that. Do not realize so many layers that you have to wear and then hold it all together. I mean, look what you're dealing with basis. And I think I'm really grateful to have been able to really give a platform for successful practitioners such as yourself and others and judges to sort of humanize this and for people to gain appreciation what all is involved. So it really is very important work. Lois, we will have you back because you and I we can talk and talk and talk. And I am so there's just so many, there's just so many places we can go, and you're just so interesting. And it's been a really true joy and privilege to have you here today. And thank you so much for sharing and being so authentic.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for highlighting the warriors, the divorce warriors out there, and helping people to understand who they are, and it helps in their selection of who they want to represent them, and also just to understand that this job is not for the faint of heart.
No, no, absolutely. And And for those of you who are interested in learning more about Lois Lieberman and also how to get hold of her, you can find a link to her bio. And I will also include a link for more information about Lyme disease and the Global Lyme Alliance. And do not forget to hit that subscribe button on our Beyond the Bar podcast YouTube channel. And make sure you definitely follow us on all social media platforms. And until next time, stay curious and inspired.